Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is the Bodega Cat Book Club Financial Edition. And today we're continuing our reading of Gold Warriors by Sterling and Peggy Seagrave. And the subtitle is called America's Secret Recovery of Yamashita's Gold. So this book was inspired by, I guess you could call it current events, especially in the precious metal um, world, especially with gold and silver. So I thought it would be a very interesting book to read. Since I've heard of this book for a while, and I've had this book on my bookshelf for a while. So, anyways, thank you for being here. And if you like what we do here, please do consider checking out our other book clubs. We have a spiritual book club on Mondays and then health book clubs on Wednesdays. And we put all the books that we've read, the past books as well as current books on YouTube. And we have them on a playlist. So you guys can just download them and listen to them when you're jogging, walking your dog, doing laundry, stuck in traffic, whatever you might be doing. And we have other things on there as well. So other contents on there as well, not just the book club. So please do check it out. Like and subscribe. And what else do you do on there? Comment and all that stuff. If you have a book you would like to recommend for us to read, please do. I will leave a link in the description box below. And we would love to consider it. And we'd love to hear from you. Um, and also, please do consider signing up for our free monthly newsletter that we put out as well. And if you want to support us further, you can buy me a coffee, leave a donation. Check out our merch. We have a lot of different designs, different merch for your fur babies, for your cats and dogs, as well as for you, for humans. So please do check it out. We're always upgrading our current designs and coming up with new designs, putting out new designs. So please do come back often and check it out. And then lastly, if you are in the Los Angeles area or visiting LA, please do come and visit us in person in our healing center. We have a healing center that we use technologies based on Nikola Tesla's scalar wave research for holistic healing for both uh, cats and dogs, as well as humans, domestic cats and dogs. So, anyways, you could read all about that on our website, as well as our other services. And we'd love to meet you and get to know you in person. So, this episode is chapter 3, part 2. And for this particular book, the author has a lot of endnotes at the end of the book. So what I'll do is I will read a page or so and go back to the back of the book to read the endnotes. So that's kind of our format here. So if you have a book, you could follow with us there. If not, you can follow with us here on camera. And I hope you're enjoying this book. It reads like a Hollywood movie. So, anyways, maybe one day somebody might pick up the rights or something and just do a movie out of it. It would be very interesting. But, anyways, okay. Let me adjust. Okay, I think that's good. All right, so here we go. It was at this bitter moment that Golden Lily came into existence. When the Japanese army swarmed down the China coast in 1937, crossed the Yangtze, and moved westward to Nanking, so many units were involved across such a broad front that there was danger of Japan's ruling elite losing control of the financial side of conquest as rival commanders competed for spoils. How could you keep Army or Navy officers from sidetracking gold bullion and priceless artworks, not to mention smaller scale theft by soldiers? At the same time, groups of yakuza were moving through newly occupied areas, conducting their own reign of terror. To keep everything under strict control at the highest level, the Imperial General Headquarters created Golden Lily, Kin no Yuri, named after one of Hirohito's poems. This was to be a palace organization of Japan's top financial minds and specialists in all forms of treasure, including cultural and religious antiquities, supported by accountants, bookkeepers, shipping experts, and units of the Army and Navy, all overseen by princes of the blood. When China was milked by Golden Lily, the army would hold the cow while princes skimmed the cream. The organization was put directly under the command of the emperor's brother, Prince Chichibu. We know the date because the Imperial General Headquarters itself was only set up in the Imperial Palace in Tokyo in November 1937, just as the rape of Nanking was commencing. The purpose of the Imperial Headquarters was to keep control of the war in the hands of the emperor and his senior advisors to avoid repeating what happened in Manchuria, where the Kwantung Army grew recklessly independent in all respects. The Imperial Army already had a number of special service units, among them intelligence teams specializing in different kinds of cultural and financial espionage, and secret service agents like General Dohara outside the ordinary command structure. These were reassigned to Golden Lily, giving it the resources needed to find treasures of all kinds, from the sublime to the most prosaic. In Nanking, the first wave of Golden Lily helpers were Kampatai. Special Kampatai units moved through the city, seizing all government assets, blowing open bank vaults, breaking into and emptying homes of wealthy families of whatever gold, gemstones, jewelry, artwork, and currency could be found. Nanking had been rich for over 1,000 years. Many wealthy and prominent Chinese had mansions in town and estates in the surrounding countryside. This was not the only time Nanking was ransacked by conquerors, but it was by far the most deliberate, meticulous, and systematic. At least 6,000 metric tons of gold are reported to have been amassed by the Kampatai during this first pass. Historical research into looting shows that what is officially reported typically is only a tiny fraction of what is actually stolen. Also looted were many of the small biscuit bars that individual Chinese prefer to hoard, along with small platinum ingots, diamonds, rubies, and sapphires, small works of art and antiquities. These were taken from private homes and from tombs vandalized by the army in the countryside. Remorselessly thorough, the Japanese hammered the teeth out of the corpses to extract gold fillings, while the Kampatai removed even the furniture, mirrors, and rugs for crating and shipment to Japan. Golden Lily Special Service units, the elite of the Secret Service, focused on individual Chinese who owned banks, headed guilds, ran pawn shops, ran pawn shop networks, or were the elders of clan associations. Particular attention was paid to heads of triads and racketeers. Although some escaped from the city, relatives were tracked down, taken into custody, and used for leverage. In this methodical fashion, Japan went far beyond the wild pillaging of Mongol hordes or the drunken rampaging of British and French troops at the Summer Palace in Peking. Okay, so let's see what kind of endnote they have there. Page 38. Okay, so the note for by 1937, Japan's gold reserves had shrunk by half. You could find that in Barnhart, Japan Prepares for Total War, page 109. The note about tons of gold, you can find that in Iris Chang, Rape of Nanking. Hey, that's nice and short. All right, continue. Let's see here. All right. Golden Lily was driven by greed, but also by necessity. In 1937, Japan's gold reserves had shrunk by half, paying for the military machine. Princes of the first tier personally compiled inventories of everything stolen, then shipped it to Shanghai in railway carriages and freight cars guarded by special army units. Military commanders thought twice before offending the princes. Prince Chichibu was well chosen as Golden Lily's overseer. Unlike Hirohito, whose education as crown prince had been narrow and tightly controlled, Chichibu had been permitted a cosmopolitan education with foreign travel, part of a year at Oxford University, holidays climbing in the Swiss Alps, and diplomatic assignments, including dinner with Adolf Hitler. Of Hirohito's three brothers, he had the most evident sense of humor and indulged in the least likely amusements. Roller skating with his young wife in the upstairs hallways of their Tokyo palace. When we first learned from Japanese sources that Chichibu headed Golden Lily, we were puzzled because his independent spirit seemed ill suited for extremes of brutality. However, what was at stake was the national treasury, on which depended the survival of the dynasty. Because of the breadth of his education and foreign experience, Chichibu was the best choice. His relatively broad mind enabled him to grasp readily the spectrum of possibilities for plunder put to him by his advisors. Extraordinary pains were taken by Prince Chichibu to see that only princes carried out final inventories or sealed the containers of treasure being sent home. From Shanghai, the plunder was shipped by sea directly to the home islands or was carried by freight train or truck convoy to Manchuria, where precious metals were graded, jewelry and irregular pieces were melted and recast in uniform ingots before onward shipment through Korea to Japan. A number of other princes joined Golden Lily at this stage, spending the war enriching Japan. Rather than participating in less glamorous and dangerous combat assignments, aside from Prince Asaka, we know Prince Chichibu and Prince Takeda were at Nanking because both later confided to friends that they had horrific nightmares from witnessing atrocities. Some sources insist that Hirohito's youngest brother, Prince Mikasa, also was physically present at Nanking. This has not been confirmed, although he was positively identified later at Golden Lily sites in the Philippines. A prime example of Japan's extraordinary attention to detail was a hand-picked special service unit of antiquarians with special knowledge of rare books and manuscripts. Some were militant monks from the Nichiren sect. Their job was to pick through the contents of China's libraries, museums, and private collections, or the libraries of Buddhist orders, and send these treasures back to Tokyo. Before the campaign began, they traveled widely in China, befriending private collectors, compiling lists of the most valuable items. In spring 1938, after the rape, more than 1,000 of these experts arrived in Nanking to begin picking through collections of rare books and manuscripts. While much of the city was in ruins, buildings housing these collections had been put under tight security. The Imperial Palace Library would have first choice of this plunder, and the very best items were set aside for the emperor's personal review. Each item was carefully numbered, wrapped, and placed in a waterproof crate. Multiple copies of inventories were made to ensure that nothing vanished on the way home. Some 2,300 Chinese conscript laborers did the physical toil of packing, watched closely by 400 soldiers. Over 300 trucks were needed to move the crates to Shanghai for loading on ships. In Tokyo, some of these stolen books were used to set up the Institute of East Asian Studies, Institute of Oriental Culture, Institute of East Asian Economy, Institute of Endemic Disease in East Asia, Great East Asia Library, and others. After the war, Chinese scholars began demanding the return of these treasures. America was aware of the theft, having conducted a survey that identified 17 locations in Japan where looted books were kept, among them the Imperial Palace, the Imperial Household Ministry, uh, Yu, Yasukuni Shrine, Tokyo Science Museum, Tokyo Art College, Waseda University, Tokyo Imperial University, and Keio University. U.S. occupation authorities concluded that Japan was holding nearly 3 million precious books and manuscripts taken from Chinese libraries. Today, scholars call Japan's libraries the finest in Asia because Japan has returned very little of what she stole. Japan recovered fewer than 160,000 volumes, less than 6%. While Golden Lily teams were hard at work plundering China, so were Japanese tycoons like Sumitomo Kichizaemon, head of Japan's immense Sumitomo conglomerate. He specialized in looting Shang bronzes. Sumitomo began his collection with trophies stolen during the 1900 siege of the legations of Peking and continued during the takeover of Manchuria and North China. But it was only during the 8-year China incident from 1937 to 1945 that he amassed the bulk of his collection, which ranks with that of Avery Brundage as one of the world's finest. How he acquired it would make interesting reading. Okay, let's stop here for now and see what our endnote says. Okay, let's see here. All right. So the note about the nightmares, Prince Takeda spoke of these nightmares to his Filipino valet, Ben Belmores, who did not know at the time where Nanking was. Author's interview with Ben Belmores. The note about special service units, details on the Japanese book squads dispatched to China to loot books and manuscripts comes from Professor Zhao Jinmin, Looting Books, Unforgettable Facts in History, a paper presented at the International Citizens Forum on War Crimes and Redress, Tokyo 10 to 12, December, or December 10 to 12, 1999. The note about Sumitomo Kichizaimon's collection of bronzes, you can find that in Roberts, Mitsui, page 380. Okay. All right. 6 months before the rape of Nanking, General Dohara called in the one man who could take full charge of looting China's underworld, Kodama Yoshio, Japan's top gangster. Normally based in Tokyo, Kodama moved to Shanghai, where he became Dohara's chief liaison with Boss 2 and the Green Gang. Before the war ended, Kodama was Golden Lily's most effective negotiator with gangsters in Indochina, Siam, Malaya, Burma, the Philippines, and Indonesia, holding their feet to the fire or, when necessary, shooting them. Kodama was short, burly, squat, and had meaty face of a professional fighter with thick lips and a heavy scar tissue. His fingers were knobby from karate and could crush a larynx. The son of a failed businessman in Nihonmatsu, at age 9, he was sent off to his aunt in Korea, where he worked in a steel mill. At 12, he fled back to Japan, where he was adopted by Yakuza, who put him to work beating up labor organizers. By 1931, he was a favorite of Black Dragon boss Toyama, implicated in the attempted murder of cabinet ministers, sentenced to prison Kodama wrote a memoir that became a handbook for fanatics. After his release, Toyama sent him to Manchuria to do wet work for General Dohara. In Tokyo, a few months later, he was jailed for plotting to bomb imperial advisors, staying in jail until 1937. He was sprung from jail by Dohara in April 1937 on the condition that he devoted his violent energies to looting China's underworld. This epiphany, the transformation of Kodama from thug to super patriot, was suggested by Black Dragon's Toyama, whose own stature was a patriot as a patriot was affirmed in 1924 when he was a guest at Emperor Hirohito's wedding. Wow, just a side note, there's no border or no line between government and um gangster, isn't it? It's like all blurred. It's all one world. There's no division, there's no boundaries. There's no good or bad, good and evil anymore, right? Interesting. That's just a thought that came to my mind. But, anyways, continuing. In November 1937, after 6 months of briefings in the foreign ministry, Kodama arrived in Shanghai to deal with the problem of carelessness. In a post-war memoir, he denounced, quote, the wanton spending of secret funds on wine, women, and debauchery in every city under Japanese occupation, end quote, and the careless destruction of valuable objects. Quote, in every temple and shrine in the occupied areas, I found the heads of Buddhas broken or cut off, end quote. If soldiers, mostly uneducated farm boys, were too stupid to steal the whole Buddha, they must be shot. While Kodama's lieutenants put these orders into effect, he spent his days taking control of alcohol, drugs, and other prime commodities. All proceeds were diverted from Chinese racketeers to Golden Lily, minus a handling charge for Kodama himself. Ultimately, Kodama was responsible to Prince Chichibu and to the throne. Princes were not equipped to deal with gangsters. Kodama saved them from soiling their hands. They converted narcotics into bullion by the simple method of trading heroin to gangsters for gold ingots. How brokers got the ingots was not his concern. He closed a deal with waterfront boss Ku Su Chuan to swap heroin for gold throughout the Yangtze Valley. Thanks to Ku's brother, KMT Senior General Ku Chu Tong, Japan also gained access to U.S. Lend-Lease supplies reaching Western China by way of the Burma Road or on aircraft flying over the hump from India. Once in warehouses in Kunming or Chongqing, the Lend-Lease was resold to the Japanese army with Kodama as purchasing agent. One of Kodama's most important converts was drug broker Yi Ching-ho. At the end of 1937, Yi dropped all pretense of patriotism and transferred his loyalty to Kodama and Japan in return for honorary Japanese citizenship under the name Nakamura Taro and his own drug domain on the island of Taiwan, where he enjoyed the prerogatives of a warlord and was kept supplied with Japanese mistresses. From Taiwan, Yi shipped narcotics directly across the strait to China's mainland. While he was not otherwise busy, Kodama and his flying squad of Yakuza thugs roved the Yangtze Valley, stopping in every town and village. Summoning local notables, Kodama immediately shot the mayor or headman in the face. This ensured immediate cooperation in donating all valuables to Emperor Hirohito. Kodama was careful to turn over to Golden Lily all valuables to Emperor Hirohito. Kodama was careful to turn over to Golden Lily all artworks, gold bullion, and general treasure, but set aside the platinum, which fascinated him. The story is told that he once loaded so much platinum on military aircraft bound for Japan that the landing gear collapsed. Therefore, he kept only the biggest and best rubies, sapphires, and diamonds, which could be shipped home unobtrusively. Oh, wow. All right, let's see what the endnote says here. What page was that? Page 40. Okay. Page 41, I think. Let me see. 41. Okay. 40 and 41. Let's see what we got here. Okay. All right. The note about Kodama and Black Ocean, you can find that in Black Dragon. Sorry, you can find that in Roberts Mitsui, page 348. The autumn assassination plans goes awry. You can find that in Kodama, I Was Defeated, page 43. April 1937, Kodama, I Was Defeated, page 57. The note about Toyama, a guest at Hirohito's wedding, you can find that in Montgomery, Imperialist Japan, page 274. Note about wanton spending of secret funds. You can find that in Kodama, I Was Defeated, page 64. The note about heads of Buddhas, you can find that in Kodama, I Was Defeated, page 65. The note about Shanghai Harbor boss Ku. Ku had an extraordinary family connections. He was the brother of one of Generalissimo Chang's top army generals, Ku Chu Tong. The Ku brothers had evil reputations. In 1940, General Ku became one of China's most hated men. While the Chinese Communist New Fourth Army passed through his territory on their way to attack the Japanese-held railway between Nanking and Shanghai, Ku ambushed them and massacred all but the headquarters contingent, including many women cadres. All these women were subjected to mass rape and kept in KMT army brothels for the next 18 months, where a number of them committed suicide. As his reward, General Ku was promoted to commander-in-chief of the KMT armies. Wow. The note about He Ching Ho and Kodama, you can find that in Marshall, Opium and the Politics of Gangsterism. That's a new word, gangsterism. Never heard that never heard that before. All right, let's continue. Officially, Kodama was in Shanghai as a buyer for the Imperial Navy Air Force. Under the rubric of the Kodama Kikan, or Kodama Agency, special service units were named after the officer in charge and then called an agency. On paper, his mission was to locate and acquire supplies of copper, cobalt, nickel, and mica. In most cases, he bought these directly from KMT Secret Police Chief General Tai Li, who was paid in heroin. According to U.S. intelligence, the Kodama Agency took over the salt monopoly, mol, molybdenum, I don't know what that is, mines, farms, fisheries, and munition plants. If anyone in the audience knows what molybdenum, MOLYBDENUM, if you know what that is, write it down in the comment below. We'd love to know. Inquiry Minds wants to know. Okay, continue. He also ran a huge shoe factory. Drugs paid for the construction of Kodama's splendid new home and garden in Tokyo. He was generous, sent gifts to the right people, and was a favorite of Hirohito's aging uncle, Prince Higashikuni. His personal circle included Vice Admiral Onishi, General Ishihara, Lieutenant Colonel Tsuchi, and Hirohito's cousin, Prince Takeda, a key figure in Golden Lily's movement of treasure. Just before Pearl Harbor and the strike south, Kodama accompanied Prince Takeda to Japan's southern military headquarters in Saigon to confer with Field Marshal Teruchi, son of the general who had looted and brutalized Korea. because the strike south would involve Japan's navy, and the navy would administer the Malay archipelago through which treasure ships must pass. Kodama was transferred overnight from the army to the navy and given the rank of rear admiral. This was like making Al Capone a U.S. Navy admiral. Kodama's rank enabled him to command ships and gave him leverage with Chinese smugglers who roved the archipelago. As Jonathan Marshall explains, quote, because the Japanese lacked a coastal army, they granted Chinese pirates a monopoly on smuggling in return for information. The Japanese sold them narcotics for $1,600 an ounce, which the pirates in turn could sell along the coast for $6,000, end quote. Kodama returned to Shanghai just in time for Pearl Harbor. The attack made little difference to millions of Asians who had been under Japanese assault for years, but it altered circumstances for Westerners. Immediately, Japan seized all their business assets and emptied Western banks. In the countryside, how you were treated depended on the local commander. Myra and Fred Scoville were relatively fortunate. They were American missionaries running a hospital at Xining, a Shantung province. The day Pearl Harbor was attacked, Japanese soldiers arrested them, and an officer said, quote, you are not to leave the house. Everything you formerly owned is now the property of the Imperial Japanese government. You are to make lists in triplicate of everything in the house. Your money is to be counted. The house searched in the presence of this officer, end quote. The Scovilles were interned in prison camps before being repatriated. Each time they were moved, their meager possessions were searched for American money. Quote, hems of dresses were felt carefully, shoulder pads ripped open, shoe soles torn off, and long hair thoroughly combed out, end quote. Returning to China after the war, they found their hospital stripped even of the window frames, doors, and plumbing. A box of silverware buried under their back porch was gone. A few weeks before Pearl Harbor, paleontologists in Peking devised a plan to rescue one of the world's great anthropological treasures, a 500,000-year-old bones and teeth of Peking man. They had been discovered in the Dragon Bone Hills about 30 miles from Peking in the 1920s. The staff at Peking Union Medical College, where the bones were stored, decided to move them to the Smithsonian Institute in America to be returned after the war. They were padded and wrapped and placed inside 9 steel ammunition boxes. These were turned over to U.S. Navy Lieutenant William T. Foley, a legation doctor now headed home with his assistant, Navy pharmacist Matt Herman Davis. With luck, they and their baggage would be protected by diplomatic immunity. But when Pearl Harbor occurred before they left Peking, they became prisoners of war. 2.5 weeks later, Foley, Davis, their boxes, and 11 U.S. Marines from the legation were taken to a railhead outside Peking and put into a and put in a boxcar bound for prison camps in Japan. After a 2-week journey, the train reached an industrial harbor. A squad of Japanese soldiers, led by a gruff officer, put Foley and his group in a shed and searched their baggage outside. A Marine who had served in Japan and spoke some Japanese heard the officer say, here they are. When Foley and the others were taken out of the shed later, the 9 steel crates were gone. The men were taken by sea to Hokkaido, where they spent 3.5 years as slave labor in Mitsubishi mines. In 1986, after hearing Dr. Foley tell his story many times in New York City, journalist Joseph Coggins flew to Tokyo to talk with a Japanese cardiologist who had studied under Foley. Over supper at a restaurant facing the Imperial Palace, the cardiologist told Coggins some fossils associated with Peking men had been reported in Tokyo after the war. He gestured toward the palace and added, quote, Peking man probably ended up not far from where we're sitting, end quote. Dr. Foley had always told Coggins, quote, I would swear on a stack of pie bowls that those bones are in the basement of the Imperial Palace, end quote. All right, end of chapter 3. And let's see the rest of the endnotes in the back here. All right, so the note about Chinese smugglers and pirates working for Japanese Navy, you can find that in Marshall, Opium, and the Politics of Gangsterism, page 42. The note about Myra and Fred Scoville, quote, you are not to leave the house. Everything you formerly owned, quote, and dot, dot, dot. Scoville, Chinese Ginger Jars, page 59 and 98. The note about Peking Man, losing Peking Man at www.peking-man.org. The National Archives of Canada, Charles Rowland, Davidson Black, Peking Man 1884 to 1943 online. Foley confided his story to Coggins, who has served with U.S. occupation forces in Japan. Coggins then told us, which is the author. And then the note about Peking Man fossils recovered in Tokyo after the war. You could find that in Stephen Broker, Hominoid Evolution, Yale New Haven Teachers Institute Curriculum Unit 79.06.www.yale.edu/YN/6/4/units//79.06.02.x.html. Wow, that's a long URL. Okay, that's the end of chapter 3. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. It's a fascinating story. Anyways, I hope you all have a great day, great evening, what else? Afternoon, wherever you guys are. And oops, sorry about that. We will see you next time in our next book club. Okay, bye-bye now.